Welcome to Connect Canyons, a podcast sponsored by Canyon School District. This is a show about what we teach, how we teach, and why. We get up close and personal with some of the people who make our schools great. Students, teachers, principals, parents, and more. We meet national experts too. Learning is about making connections. So connect with us.
Welcome and thank you for joining us on Connect Canyons. I'm your host, Frances Cook. November 8th is National STEM or National STEAM Day. For those who went to school before the 2000s, the idea of STEM or STEAM may as well be a whole new subject in school. But it's not a new curriculum, it's a framework for teaching. On this episode, we're celebrating National STEM or National STEAM Day and taking a moment to better understand the overall concept. I'm joined now by Chandra Martz, Digital Teaching and Learning Specialist for Canyons District, and Cynthia Lloyd, our Elementary STEM Specialist. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. It's good to be here.
Now, we've seen our students' test scores rising since STEM has been implemented. Chandra, let's start with you, and let's start at the beginning. Can you tell us what is STEM or STEAM, and why is it so important?
Yeah, so when we're talking about STEM or STEAM, it is an acronym. It stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Mathematics. So basically, it started with STEM minus the arts, and then later on they decided that arts was very important, and they brought in the A component of it. It is how all of those components are working together in order to get students to think beyond just one subject. So instead of just thinking about math, it's how are math and science working together? How are technology and engineering working together? Because when you think of careers, you don't think of just them being a mathematician. It's they do math and technology, and there's some science added in, and a lot of times there's the design, which is like our engineering and our arts.
So along with that, it's all about integrating those subjects together. And those integrations, they develop deeper learning. They develop the ability for students to learn more critical thinking skills and problem-solving skills across all of the different disciplines. And when you talk about science, you're usually talking about the content of science, whereas how you do science is through the math and the technology and the engineering.
You touched briefly on that art was added later, and that was spearheaded by Georgette Yackman, and I love how she quantifies that addition. She says the liberal arts are the who and the why, or the reasoning, if you will, behind that what and how of STEM. Like you were saying, it's all combined. So Cynthia, let's go to you. Let's talk about how STEM and or STEAM is being implemented in our classrooms.
Okay, so with our kindergarten through second grade, we have units that has every single one of the contents integrated. With 4th through 6th grade, we do have Inspire Science that our schools are using that also have the content built in there. We have students working through looking at a phenomena first, and then they do different learning experiences that are a little bit of text that they read, a lot of hands-on. They do engineering projects where they build models, and they refine their models based on a problem that they're trying to work through. It is very much no longer a sit and get, which is mostly how most adults nowadays learn just basically science. We are literally teaching our students to have the skills to look at things that they'll encounter in their real lives. For example, our kindergarten students are learning about how they can prepare for weather, and they start by looking at weather patterns, and then they move into how can we be prepared by looking at what's going on with the weather, what we get dressed the next day. That's something that you probably don't think about, but that's something that all of us look at every single day. You don't know you're doing STEM-related things every single day by just looking at the weather and deciding how you're going to get dressed. That's problem solving, and those are really simple for us now, but when they're in kindergarten, that's not something that they know to look for in their real lives. The whole point of doing STEM in the classroom is engaging students in real-life phenomena that they will see. The Utah seed standards are a little bit different than our national standards, and I love the difference. One of the reasons why they were written specifically for Utah is we don't want our students worried about something that's happening halfway around the world. We want them to delve into problems and real life scenarios and applications of science and technology and engineering and math that they have in their everyday lives here in Utah. I love that it's bringing learning from the classroom to problems that they're going to encounter for the rest of their lives. I want to just talk about the A in STEM a little bit. I am a proponent for the A in STEM. My background is in science and math, but I'm not super artistic, but I do understand the value for having the A. It is a way for us to have students use those skills in a little bit different way that builds different connections in their brains. And a lot of times we can really enforce the vocabulary that we use in our classrooms within those different arts projects. For example, same unit with our kindergarten kids, they're learning about weather, and they finish off the unit by doing an arts where they're actually making weather with their hands and making a rain dance. And that is a way for them to use the vocabulary that they've used, the knowledge they've used to form a rain dance around a scenario that the teacher gives them. It's just a really cool way to build those deeper connections with students.
That hands-on experience is, like you said, I think it's so unique to those of us who grew up reading from a textbook, and that's how we learned about what a hurricane is or why it's cold when it snows, things like that. I had the opportunity to go to one of our elementary schools where they were having a STEM day, and one class was making ovens, solar ovens that they put outside and made s'mores with. And another class was making their own wands, like Harry Potter. And to see them put all the connections together to then get that LED light on the end to light up their face lit up just as bright. And it's so cool to get to see them have that moment. It's literally that aha moment, right?
We also have brain boosters in our classrooms. And those brain boosters in elementary school allow those kids to go to either library or music or some sort of art, other types of art classes. But we also have our STEM brain booster, and that allows those kids to learn how to code. It teaches them how to be good digital citizens. It teaches them how to take that coding and make a robot move. And kids love to be able to do that. It's very hands-on and very active, and the kids are super engaged whenever they go to that. And just by asking the right questions, our teachers can get the kids thinking about things in ways that they may not have otherwise.
Absolutely. And taking those skill sets, that knowledge and those skill sets beyond school, beyond just, this is why mom wants me to put a jacket on in the morning because it's cold. Women in STEM has been a big topic of conversation as STEM has evolved as well. According to Pew Research, women make up a quarter or fewer of workers in computer and engineering. The U.S. Census says while women are nearly half of the U.S. workforce, they only make up 27% of STEM workers. It's a big jump from where we were in 1970 when women made up 38% of the workforce and only 8% of the STEM portion. But we still have a long way to go, right? So how are we as a district getting girls in particular involved in STEM?
So I think one way is just by making it a part of their everyday lives. So as I mentioned, the brain boosters, that gets every kid with a robot in their hand, or it gets every kid coding. Another way that we are doing that is starting in January, we are actually going to be offering a STEM endorsement for our K through 6 teachers. It is an elementary STEM endorsement, but our goal is to help them figure out that they can do STEM inside of their classroom. It doesn't have to be a pull-out activity. It doesn't have to be a before or after school thing. Like what they're doing, the questions they're asking, just by changing their activities just a little bit, they're bringing STEM into their classrooms and they're making it happen for their students. And so we're hoping we've had quite a bit of interest, and we're hoping to get a lot of teachers taking our STEM endorsement so they can start thinking about how to include STEM into their classrooms on a daily basis.
That's awesome.
I recently received a grant from the STEM Action Center. It's called the Computing Partnership Grant. And within that grant, we had to actually have a partnership with a local or national company, and we chose to use Girls Who Code. Girls Who Code is a great resource for us because it does focus on women and minorities. It doesn't mean that other kids, it doesn't mean boys or it doesn't mean anyone else can't learn how to code using Girls Who Code curriculum, but it does put that focus on showing girls that it's okay to code, that it's okay to do computer science, that it's not just for boys. So we're doing that for our first session, and then we're doing a second session of our group that's called STEAM Squad that anyone can also join, and it is teaching kids how to use computer science in another way, whether that is doing filmmaking or other types of robotics. It's also focusing on coding microchips to make robots move. We have Dash robots that they're playing with. We've got microbits. We have Strawbees that's bringing in the engineering pieces of it. So it's stuff that anyone could enjoy, not just a certain, like boys or girls. It's just fun for all.
You're also implementing STEM nights, correct?
Yeah, so as another part of this grant, we have brought in materials that and built kits that have, 12 different stations that can be checked out by the schools, and when they check those out, they can hold an actual STEM night at their school where families can come and participate. Every activity has standards that they're related to, so we went off of the SEED standards, we went off the math standards, the technology standards, and art standards, and we incorporated those standards into every activity that we did and created challenges that are based around those standards.
One of the really fun things about going to those STEM nights, we just recently went to one at Midvale Elementary School, is it's a family affair. It's not the parents standing in the background, it's the whole family working on whatever that project is together. And we offer questions for the parents to be able to get in the habit of asking their students, and they are not just for STEM night, they're for everyday things at home, like you said, cooking in the kitchen. There are basic questions that you can ask students like, can you tell me why you're doing that? Is that the best way, or is there a different way you could do it that might be better? Things like that are questions that parents can ask at any time. The one thing that Chandra didn't mention, which I'm going to actually have her talk about a little bit more, is the other aspect of the grant that she wrote. The third part is maker spaces. And some of our girls tend to be thought of as being maybe a little bit more creative, and they let their creative nature flow, and that's a good way for them to be able to actually work with things that are STEM related in a makerspace type atmosphere where they can show that creative and that innovation in a different way. And so it is also open for everyone. And do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, so this year we incorporated makerspaces into every middle school that wanted one. So currently we have 5 of 8 that have implemented these makerspaces, and the goal is that during a non-contract time, so that could be a before or after school or a during lunch, for 2 hours a week, these kids can go and get involved in those makerspaces where they're able to build and create and innovate and just let their creativity flow. We've got about $4,000 worth of materials that were brought into each of these schools, and that's everything from Kiva planks, where the kids are just able to build and grow and create, Intolino trains that are going to work for our students who need to do tiles, colors that will allow them to code, versus block coding, where the kids are able to do a drag and drop to make that train move, and to all the way up into actual programming, where those kids are able to program those trains to do what they want them to do. And so through our maker spaces, they're able to just build and create. Like I said, we have them in our middle schools right now, and we have 5 elementary schools that are piloting them for us. And then as for next year, any school K through 8 in our district will be able to house a makerspace. So that means that kids kindergarten through 8th grade will be able to come in to maybe their libraries or an open other classroom, and they can be able to innovate with these tools. One thing that I really like about our makerspaces is that I have asked our teachers to use Solvent Time, which is a program that helps kids start to think and understand the problem-solving process, where it starts to get them thinking not only about what can I make with these blocks, but what if this looked bigger? What if this was global? What if this, related to our current events? And it gets them to start thinking on that bigger sense of how they can make an impact in the world.
And something that we're working on is, her grant is specifically for before, after school, or at lunch for the makerspace, but we are working on training our teachers to use and utilize the makerspaces during their classroom time also and tie it to the curriculum. So that's a direction that you might see some change in the next couple of years for.
That's really great to hear. So from our classrooms, the curriculum going on in there, to lunch hour, to STEM nights, it sounds like if you want to do something related to STEM or STEAM, there's plenty of options available. So I'd like to go back to what you were saying about how parents are getting involved in the STEM nights and the questions that you're sitting home with them. I know some parents, when it comes time to sit down and do, say, your math homework, and their kids are sitting down and the parents are looking at these questions going, what is this foreign language? It seems like our kids are sometimes smarter than we are. What are some ways that parents can get involved, like asking those questions?
I think one of the big things is when I was growing up, at least, it was the adult always has the answer and the kid just has to be like, oh, okay, that's the answer because my parent told me so or my teacher told me so. And that's not necessarily the case anymore. A lot of times we're really trying to teach our teachers and teach our brain booster technicians and teach our makerspace facilitators that it's okay not to know the answer, but help guide the students to figure out that answer. And so when we're working with parents, it's the same concept. The parent doesn't have to know everything, but getting those kids to think creatively and to think outside of the box to help figure out and solve problems, to me is one of the biggest things that parents can do, is get the kids thinking beyond what they would normally do. If they are doing any sort of activity, it's like, well, why is this working how it is? How is it working? What are other ways that you could make it work? Or if they're doing a math problem, is that the only way you can solve that problem? It gets those kids thinking, it's, oh no, maybe I can solve it this way, or maybe I can solve it this way. So just getting them thinking outside of the box, to me, is huge.
Can you explain your reasoning? Give me an example. Can you do it a different way?
Sure.
If you've got it done this way, can you think of another way to do it? Those are all different ways to get students thinking on a more critical level. I know when I was going to school, there was one way to do a math problem. And now our students have several ways to be able to do it. So if they can't remember one way, they can go back and they can use another strategy that they've learned. So it's all about teaching those strategies and having parents do that. One way that they can, not that's homework, but that they can work with students at their house is just instead of putting the blocks out for students and letting little kids play with blocks, say, oh, can you build me a bridge? Or could you do this? Make it into like a problem that they have to do rather than just say, let's just sit down and just play with blocks. You'll find that creative outlet for students and for little kids, they're like geniuses. You'll think they're geniuses because they can come up with some of the coolest projects just because they've had time to sit and tinker. Mm-hmm. When it's not a step-by-step guide anymore, it's more of a, how do you do this? How could you build this model? What changes can you make? How can you improve it? What could you do better? So can you explain what you've done? The communication part is important there. If students can explain what they've done, they don't have those deep connections in their own brains.
I think you bring up such a good point that there's more than one way to solve a problem. Mm-hmm. When we were going to school, like you said, it was, this is the one way to solve this problem, and you have to show us the 10 steps that it took you to get there. I think that's what's so hard for some parents to wrap their minds around is, oh, I don't have this answer. It has to be one answer. Where's the answer? No, it could be more answers. Thomas Edison said, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. And I think that's a good lesson to teach our kids, right? It's okay to fail or not have the answer. It's taking that time to stop and think and say, okay, where can we go from here?
And I really do feel that STEM education really does build that resiliency in students. It teaches them to be patient, to understand that it's not there yet. We just need to do something a little bit different, and it's all about tweaking the projects that they're working on. One common misconception with STEM that I think is really important to note, especially on National STEM Day, is that STEM does not always involve digital for technology. It could be that you have at home paper, that your kids just have paper and crayons. What kind of project, what kind of activity can you have them build with paper, with folding paper, with drawing on it, things like that. So it doesn't always have to be like robots and the digital
Coding
part and
things,
coding.
yeah.
Technology is anything that we manipulate for our use. That's the formal definition for it that is taught. We can have STEM anywhere and everywhere in our lives, whether it's the kitchen, whether it's at the playground, whether it's at building a sandcastle on a beach somewhere. Those opportunities are there. We just need to be able to give kids the opportunity and build that resilience and kind of spark their imagination by asking them those questions to get them started.
I think that's a good way to look at getting your kids ready for STEM, right? Because STEM starts at a certain grade. So you have-
Kindergarten.
in kindergarten.
Kindergarten.
So parents at home, like you said, instead of just setting out the blocks, have them help you in the kitchen, have them help you with cooking and measurements. I think this is a great way for all of us to expand how we look at things. Are there any other steps you would advise parents to take to get their kiddos ready, but as they're coming into kindergarten next year?
We always talk about like what chores do kids do at home? It could be something as simple as them folding socks. And as they're folding socks, it's like comparing and contrasting, like, okay, like, is this sock bigger or smaller? Which one's more colorful? And have them start like comparing those types of things. It could be that as they're putting out the silverware, it's like, well, how many do we need? Well, if we're putting out forks and spoons, how many pieces of silverware is it? So they're starting to think, even at age 2 and 3, and starting to be able to count those or finding colors or patterns in their daily lives. One of the first ways that kids learn how to read is by looking at like logos, so like a McDonald's or a Chick-fil-A, and they can point out those signs. Like that is them starting to learn how to read. So it's that same concept when we're getting into STEM, is how are we starting to build those patterns or build that understanding at that young age.
Christmas is coming up. I know it's a little early to talk about it, but you start to see deals on STEM gifts and things. And there are some, like you said, that are STEM and are not. What would your advice be to parents looking ahead to maybe find a STEM toy or something to get their kids intrigued?
So I guess one thing that I would suggest is don't buy them a toy that is going to be a one solution type of toy. So I know a lot of times we buy like a kit that it's like, this is what you build with this kit. Instead, buy more of a generic type of toy where it's like, you can build 200,000 things based off of your imagination.
Sure.
I think that is huge. Another thing is, what can you build that will have multiple solutions to it? So one of the things that we put into the STEM night kits is they're called Code and Go Mouse. And I really like them because a kid can go very, very basic and program that mouse to get to the cheese by just moving forward one spot. Great, that is basic for a little tiny kid. They can also start going and doing like, okay, it's going to turn left once, it's going to move forward 3 times, and then it's going to turn right. Gets a little bit more basic, okay? And then they can program that same mouse to make sure that it goes around walls, and it can make sure it's turning every time it moves, you know? So it's actually getting those kids really thinking in depth about what they're doing. And those are things that can be from basic to advanced.
That's great advice.
I would encourage art kits too, especially when you're looking at all different sorts of grades, because you can talk about triangles, you can talk about shapes. A little bit higher, you can talk about ratios and what different colors are in different ratios together, and fractions. You can bring all of that in together, and that is something that also shows creativity, and they can build things with paper. They can make like 3D collages and stuff like that. Anything along those lines too. But one of the things that's really important to remember is that in order for it to be STEM, those critical thinking skills have to be there, and those problem-solving skills have to be there. And many of our elementary students are still learning the process, and so it does take a parent or guardian's interaction to kind of ask them the questions. Why is it doing that? Can you show me this? How could you change this? Because a lot of the kids are not prepared for that at a really early age, and so to develop those STEM skills from even preschool on age.
So it opens up that family game night opportunity,
It's perfect.
right?
It's the perfect opportunity for it.
That's great.
So, and it could be that you're cooking dinner and you've got someone doing something on the side, and you just pop over every once in a while. Tell me how you did that, or explain to me while I'm stirring the whatever's on the stove. those questions are really, really important during the process.
One thing that I wanted to mention is that when we think of STEM, we always think of like the high tech. And it's like, you even said, with the holidays coming up, what are some gifts that parents may give? And it's like, yeah, you can go out and buy the Sphero, which is an amazing tool to teach them how to code, or a Dash robot or things like that. But STEM doesn't have to be expensive. You could do STEM projects with water. You could do STEM projects with a toilet paper roll. Like, you can build cleaners. And create and use straws or use toothpicks to help create models. Like, marshmallows are pretty cheap, and most people have them around their house. Like, that's a great way to start building. Though you can go high tech, you can do very basic things with what you've got around your house.
That's a really great point. It doesn't have to be a robot. It can be a homemade oven to make s'mores in.
Yeah,
that you get to go outside and have fun with. Maybe not in December, but maybe a little later. What's one takeaway you want people to know about STEM or the programs being implemented here at Canyons?
I think that one thing I really want them to know is that STEM can be done by anyone. It's based off of the questions that are being asked, getting those kids thinking critically, getting them to be problem solvers, because if they can learn those skills at an early age, think of where they're going to be when they get to middle school. Think of where they're going to be when they get to high school, and think of how they're going to change the world when they get out of high school and move on to their careers.
We are building career ready. Doesn't matter what kind of career, doesn't matter if you're going to be a stay-home mom or a dad. We're building career-ready students. I think the thing that I would really like to highlight is that all students can do STEM. Like Chandra was saying, I have had students in my own classroom that might have had some learning disabilities or are multilingual learners that might have language skills, that they can always find an entry place for STEM and find really great success in the classroom with content, with learning when it's opened up and it's more hands-on, more visual for students. So it is kind of a conduit for everyone can learn. It doesn't matter the ability level. Everyone can have success and have fun. STEM should be fun learning. It should be engaging. Collaborative, definitely collaborative. All those skills that all the companies around us are saying that we want our employees to have those skills. That's where it's going to come from, is through the STEM.
Well, I want to thank you both for joining us. This has been extremely enlightening for me, having come from old-style learning of, again, just, one question, one solution. And it's been eye-opening, I hope, for our parents and things on what we're doing in our classrooms and how they can help out their kiddos as they learn and grow in our Canyons classrooms. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you for listening. If you have a topic you'd like to hear discussed, just send us an email to communications@canyonsdistrict.org.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Connect Canyons. Connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram @Canyons District, or on our website, canyonsdistrict.org.